like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Laughing gear.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
The quiet man.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Dopamine. Jim.
It's all my love.
Welcome to the Soul Patch Podcast, the podcast where three expats discuss education, culture, and life here on the Korean Peninsula. I'm Jack, and I'm here with my friends Ryan and Kevin. Guys, how you doing this evening?
Fantastic.
All right. How you doing?
Sounds good. Kev, you told me I think yesterday you mentioned that that was the last dog day of summer. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the Mugwort, the last dog day of summer. Yeah, there's three of them every year. Like we talked about this a few weeks ago during the middle one, and there's also one at the beginning of summer. Basically, they kind of symbolize the beginning, the hottest day of the summer, and then kind of the way Koreans think about it is starting yesterday, we're kind of entering the fall, and the temperatures will slowly start to drop a bit.
So there's these 3 days. They're not holidays, right? But they're
identified as they're in the lunar calendar. They're not like red days, or they're not anything that people celebrate, but it's just something that all the samgaetang, all the chicken chicken soup places will become very popular on these days.
Well,
so yesterday was the final of them.
You know, my Korean level is low. So does it translate to like dog days of some? Is it the same metaphor that we use, or is that something you're calling it?
It's just totally different. I don't know what the bok stands for. Malbok just means it's like jumal, like end of week. So ma and then bok is. I'll try and find it. I'll look up the Hanja. I'll look up the Chinese for it while we're talking. But no, it doesn't mean the dog days.
On these days, you have to eat certain foods. There's certain special foods you're supposed to eat. I've never done this. But
I've only familiar with the one day, which was the samgaetang. I knew that samgaetang was like one. You eat that on a special day or something like that. But
yeah.
And samgaetang, by the way, we should probably define that for our audience. Our listeners, it's a chicken stew more than a soup, I would say, right? Is it?
It's a braise. Well, yeah, really wet braise. So yeah, somewhere between a soup and a braise.
And it's got ginseng root in there, which
the whole root, not like ginseng powder. This is like big chunks, like you eat a potato.
I love it. I eat it. Some people just leave it in for flavor. I just go crazy on it. I love it. And ginkgo beans, is that right? Do you know the ginkgo? Yeah, they smell like just
unheng, yeah, the ginkgo, yeah.
Unnamu, the ginkgo tree berries.
Sorry, ginkgo tree berries. Isn't that in samgaetang as well?
I always thought it was the little dates.
Okay, and the dates are definitely in there too. Yeah, but I thought there was also the ginkgo berries, but I
have it like once every 2 years. I
haven't had it in a couple of years either. Yeah. Well, Kevin
so
lives,
they take rice. They take a bunch of rice that they cram a bunch of rice in its butt, like you do at
like a turkey, Thanksgiving
turkey.
Yeah,
but it's just rice.
Yeah.
And they tie that off. You steam it or braise it in water. So it's like the broth has really no salt, so it's kind of strange that way, but the amount of gelatin, because all the bones, it's like such a sticky on your lips kind of broth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think about it. I should eat it more often. It sounds kind of great.
It's actually fantastic, and they have there's a little dish usually of salt where you dip the chicken in the salt.
Yeah.
And
I usually take the salt and I sprinkle it into the soup.
Yeah, right. So and it creates like a wonderful porridge at the end, which I highly recommend it. It is my favorite Korean food. Like it's my number one. So yeah, I love it.
So yesterday was the last day not the last day, was an official day to have one of those.
So samgaetang day.
Yep, pretty much.
Okay.
Right on.
And
yeah. But
Sorry,
I did not
ahead,
eat that yesterday, actually.
Yeah, so
I did for the middle one.
So this week we want to talk about our early food experiences, or like how we adapted. Is that the idea here?
Yeah, and we can also extend that to talk about just how we deal with like food shopping and cooking and how often we eat out. I think Korea is
also
really
so easy to. I think it's so easy to talk about all the foods that you still love. Like you were talking about, you just love samgaetang, right?
Oh,
I love a lot of the red foods here. I mean, pretty much. I mean, kimchi, jaeukbokkeum, the kind of spicy pork. what's the spicy soup? I haven't had it in a while. Any of the red foods. I like spicy stuff. You guys are into spicy, of course, as well, yeah?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, I do. I love spicy food. Like you said, jayuk bokum is some pork in bokum is mixed rice basically, or fried rice.
Fried.
Sorry, fried rice.
It's fried. Yeah, bokum doesn't necessarily mean rice. Bokum just means like kind of pan fried.
Oh, I'm sorry, pan fried. Okay. Bokum bop. Bop is rice.
There you go.
Korean.
Bop is
okay.
rice.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, it's easy to think about foods. I think something could be kind of interesting. I'm curious, what kind of foods, because there's so many good things. Like I love Korean food. I love the spicy stuff. And I'm sure you guys have been told many times, like, wow, you like spicy. You've gotten that. So what foods do you still not like in Korea? What are things that you don't dig on?
I can tell you one thing that I can't get on board with. Anything that has to do with feet, chicken feet, pig feet. I'm not a fan, and it goes back to my childhood. And I did not have a traumatic foot experience as a child, but it's that texture. Like when I was a kid, same. You couldn't. If you said, I'll give you $100 to eat this tomato, I couldn't eat it. I hated the texture of that of a tomato. But I love pasta sauce, tomato sauce.
Right.
It's so for me, texture is very important. So eating like chicken feet, that cartilage and it just gives me the willies.
For me, the chicken feet is like, it does nothing for me. It's just like, it's like it's like a beer snack kind of thing. So I'm not into it. Blah. The pig's feet though, like the trotters, whatever they call it, it's
okay.
Yeah, jokbal. So this is basically like, it's pig's feet. That's braised with a lot of I think it's like star anise. It almost has like a cinnamon flavor. It reminds me a little bit of like Vietnamese pho, like that broth in a way. Well,
that doesn't sound so bad actually, but
it's actually that flavor of jokbal is the pig's feet flavor. The spices they use, I don't think that really seems like other Korean dishes. It reminds me more of something like Southern Chinese dishes. So it's a little bit different. I agree with what Jack's saying though, like a texture thing. That was rough coming to Korea. So that's definitely something that I've changed. I remember, some of the first meals you get are things like moksal, which is slices of pork neck, or samgyeopsal classic, which is it's pork belly, and pork belly is delicious. I mean,
but it's got a big chunk of the skin, and the fat is also one of the layers, right?
The first slices of samgyeopsal I had. So the way they bring this to your grill, it looks like it's raw. They bring it to the table raw, and there's a fire on the table, and it looks like super thick cut raw bacon. So it's uncured, just raw pork belly. And the skin is still on it, the crackling or whatever. I mean, it's raw. It was one of the first experiences I had. The hair was still on it. You're
most
watching
places don't do that. Though.
I was looking. You looked at me like that. This piece of meat has more hair than I do.
Yeah, it's more common to have. It's more common to even have the skin trimmed off. But
I've never seen it with the hair on. To be honest,
I've seen it with the hair on, very specifically with the Jeju black pork. And the reason they do that is they want to prove that this is the actual
this is black pig,
the Jeju black pig, and so they leave just a little bit of that hair on. It's kind of like it's a magic trick, show you what's happening. It's like, oh, look over here, it really is what I'm showing you.
Yeah, and the pieces of pork belly, they'll also have often a little bit of the rib tip still in the slice. So it's the soft cartilage at the end of the rib, and you can actually crunch through it. And occasionally I would. These days, I don't know. It just seems...
No, I feel like it's a tooth. It's like a trip to the dentist,
incoming.
Fish bones too. Like in Korea, it's pretty common if the fish bones are small, they'll crunch through them.
Yeah.
And
depends on the fish, but yeah, there's some.
Oh, that's what I said. Like for small bones. So what's that little fish? It's seasonal.
Mielchi?
No,
not that. Okay.
You get it live. They're about this big, and they're seasonal. I think it's autumn. I'm not sure. Maybe spring. And they cut it into slices and you eat it just hui, which is raw fish in Korea. So it's like sashimi kind of, it's unaged sashimi. So they just take the live fish and they slice it up and then you just eat it. But that one, you eat the spine of the fish. You just crunch through it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
small.
I don't know the name of that one, but
I don't know what the name of this fish is, but my mother-in-law prepared one that you absolutely can just bite right through. It just melts right in your mouth, the spine and everything. So it's delicious. I wish I knew the name of it. I'm not a foodie, unfortunately. So
Same.
I think we've got one. Ryan is definitely the resident expert today. Last week Kev was the language expert. Today Ryan is the food expert. Yeah,
we'll see how far my knowledge goes. I think Kevin actually probably knows quite a bit because he lives in a much more Korean home than I do. So I think he has a lot more Korean meals, I think, than I do.
He's got the the location to the mother-in-law is huge. I mean, that's
this is true.
That's a lot of that's an encyclopedia of knowledge right there. So yeah.
I really need to take advantage of it and actually learn how to like make kimchi the way she does and things like that, because I just wish I cared about kitchen stuff more. Going back to really quick, what you were saying about foods you don't, for me, texture is really big as well. Like one food that I still just don't really dig on in Korea that Korean people just love is
let me guess, dotori
muk.
Dotori
No,
muk?
actually, I like that.
Oh,
that one
I'm sorry. Okay. We'll talk about that later.
No, just rice, just like tteokbokki, rice, like spicy rice cake stuff. Like I just don't really like duck very much. It's just chewy. And I don't dig on the chewy stuff. It's the same with
so that's a weird food. It's a weird food, man. Like I mean, duck,
it's like it's a noodle. It's like a carbohydrate super noodle or really something. Is. You know what I mean? Like the amount of calories like per square inch is probably unparalleled when it comes to tteokbokki, rice cake,
For listeners, what duck is the rice in Korea. There's kind of two primary types that people will have here. There's one that basically you eat just like white rice and it's quite sticky. And if you've been to a Korean restaurant, you've seen this, or you've been to Korea, you've seen this. And there's another one which is like super, 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 super sticky. Like you could build a house with it. And they'll use this to, so if you picture cooking the rice and then you have like the sticky substance that comes out of it, they're just rendering the rice to get this. This is my general understanding. I'm not teaching a course here. I've never done this. But
that sounds right to me. Like
it's basically what it's the like highly glutinous rice, I guess.
It's like if you went to a bakery when they're kneading bread or something. Like it's just you're it's continually packing it together.
So you cook the rice and the liquid that's coming off it has a lot of this snotty type gluten or something, I think. And I think you end up using the remaining rice. You could correct me on this one, Kev. You might know, for shikye, the sweet drink, whatever. Anyway, so it's a rendered part of cooking rice that you can pack into what looks like, like a block of clay almost, or like gum. It is the stickiest thing. It tastes, to me, honestly, it tastes like nothing. It's really neutral.
It's like tofu. You put it in stuff and it takes up the flavor of the things that you.
I think it makes, by comparison, I think it makes tofu taste super flavorful. Like duck is like just.
I love tofu.
Yeah.
Wow, this is interesting. I'm going to be I'm going to take the other position here. I love duck. My daughter's favorite food is tteokbokki. I can eat now. I try not to eat it because I think we established earlier in a different podcast I have a penchant to my weight likes to go up and down and up and down, and if I'm eating duck, it's going up. So I stay away from it for that reason. But I love it. I love the texture of duck, which is weird because I hate the texture of like pig's feet or chicken feet. But when it comes to rice, for some reason it is sticky but it's kind of benign because it comes from rice.
I like it. I like it when we make it in house. We make it in house here. I like it. I don't like eating it typically in restaurants that I go to, because the type of duck that we get here the one that my girlfriend buys like online or whatever, it's a little less sticky. So when I bite it, it actually separates into pieces.
Well, Ryan, a lot of the duck that you'll get in restaurants as well, it's made from flour.
Okay. Ah, okay. So it's apples and oranges then.
Yeah, I mean, right. So that's actually if you look for salto, like rice cake, instead of milk instead of flour rice cake, instead of flour. Yeah, it's not rice
so
cake.
So they make like a cheaper version essentially. That's just like in
basically.
Oh,
Yeah, so definitely,
okay,
like if you go to like one of the cheap tokboki places or something, like I'd put dimes to dollars that it's going to be flour, not rice. So like a lot of times if we get it here at home, my mother-in-law or something will be like, "Oh, this is rice cake." Like,
is it
wheat flour?
It's wheat flour, not like rice flour.
Like I believe so.
Ground rice. Yeah. Again, just for the record, I don't really know how it's processed. That was my impression based on the material, because I've never ever made it myself. But one fun fact I do know about duck, since we're talking about it, one fun fact, it's old as hell. It's like one of the oldest foods in the world.
No way.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So it seems like, I thought that was kind of impressive, because when I think about it, it seems like a rendered thing. It came from like rice, and you would expect rice to be the older thing, but actually it was a way of like eating rice that's super old. It's like what you did with rice.
Yeah.
Name a year. You have to go Wikipedia to find it, but kind of cool that it's.
And I'm sure it's right around the same time they were making alcohol with rice too. You know what I mean? When they learned how to.
I'm sure those two things.
Those two things are like right together.
Came together.
Yeah, I need a drink with this. This rice snack.
Yeah,
we have more rice. How can we turn this into a drink?
Like, I'll tell you what though.
I'm not a fan of duck necessarily. Like I said, I'll eat it here and I can enjoy it. It's okay. But as far as like, if you've never been to Korea, you've never had this as a food thing, and you like exploring new foods, it's tame. I mean, it's not like you're eating like, a chicken's butthole or something weird. Like it's not.
Which is a thing in Korea.
Which is a thing here.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's just he wasn't just
Ryan's not being facetious when he
was just pulling out of thin air right there.
Yeah, chicken buttholes, you can eat them in Korea.
Yes.
It's
no, tteokbokki is a very safe food. You're right. It's a very, very, very safe food.
But it's going to be a very big.
I'm just not a fan of the texture.
It's a big experience for someone who hasn't had that food. It's going to feel strange. It's a weird one.
But walking by what they call a duck jeep, like a rice cake house in the morning when they're cooking that stuff, it smells wonderful. It's so nice.
Oh, the place, just like not the restaurant, but the little places that actually make
where
rice
they sell the
themselves.
cakes and stuff like that. If you walk by one of those in the morning and all that steam coming out,
actually.
It really is. It does smell wonderful. That's a treat.
You do like carbs. You do like.
I do. Yeah, I told you I'm fighting the battle against carbs, and I'm losing. I'm losing horribly.
How about to move from foods that we don't like? What about had there been any foods that were hard for you to get used to at first, but you've now grown to like them? And these can be like just really simple things. Like for me, actually, nudongji, like the burnt rice, basically that you get.
Yeah. When you
burnt
put
rice
the
soup.
Hot water in there and kind of scrape.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just crunchy. It's just like a snack, like nudongji. That for me tasted like nothing. For me, it's burnt rice. It's like, why do you like burnt rice? But I've made a concerted effort over the last bunch of years that whenever I go to a restaurant, I just eat or drink the nudongji, the burnt rice, because Koreans, for them, this is like super comfort food, and like everyone likes it, even though it tastes like nothing.
Yeah,
but it's just comfort food. Like I know, but they love it because it's very savory. I think they would say it's very gose.
But there's no salt. It's not salty though. It's not. There's no flavor to it. Yeah.
So that's something for me that I still don't necessarily enjoy, because again, it tastes like nothing. But I've gone from the like, oh, this is nothing, to okay, there's something to it. I'm trying to get to the point where I can actually appreciate it, because it's so ubiquitous and just all Koreans just love it. Like I haven't met a single Korean person that didn't like nudongji. Yeah, my wife is just listening to me now, and she's like, "Yeah, it's just very savory. That's the flavor. It's savory."
It's worth describing that one for the listeners too. So what he's talking about, it's not just burnt rice. It's like, okay, if you've ever made rice, well, if you ever made rice in a pot, okay, and you don't have like a rice cooker or whatever, and your pot is not like a Teflon lining, it's like a stainless steel or other, and you didn't use enough water or you overcooked it. And then when you go and fluff the rice, you can get all the rice out, but there's like a coating of rice that's stuck to the whole pot. They leave that there. They turn
it's a little bit burnt.
Yeah, it's a little burnt.
In the West, we call that garbage. But
basically.
Sorry, not to be rude, but
it would be. It would go down the drain. So it's all, you'd be like, what that's called is like that's a dish. It's a dish doing problem. It's a cleanup problem.
Right.
But what they do is they turn up the heat, and it not burnt black, but it super toasts it, and then you're deglazing basically. You throw water in, and it breaks it off, and then that you can drink and eat it. But for like on the street, or if you go to like a 7-Eleven, even, I think a lot of Pyeongjeom's like convenience stores, you can buy just that cooked crispy,
just like the cracker
skin rice thing, and you just snack on it if you want to, or you can throw it in water at home and then make your own little thing.
And you know what? For all the crapping I've been doing on it, I always eat it. Carbs. I told you I'm losing the battle on carbs. So
it's still carbs.
These carbs have no taste at all, but I will finish it all.
Cannot stop.
So that's a simple food that for me, like, there's really no reason I wouldn't. It's not like some strange. I mean, there's a lot of crazy foods here. Every country has crazy foods, and this isn't something that was like, oh, that's weird. It was just, I'm like, I just don't dig on it, but I'm trying to get there with this specific food.
Well, I'm gonna go. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Ryan. Didn't mean to jump on in front of you. Mine was. I'm not gonna say kimchi, because I think like kimchi is the thing that you struggle with, and then all of a sudden you wake up at 6 a.m, 6 months into your life in Korea, and you just, all you want to do is eat like a pound of kimchi. Like you know what I mean? Like there's nothing more delicious than just kimchi right now. But for me, it was dotori muk, and dotori is acorn, which again in America we feed squirrels. We let them have those. We don't collect them, right? We don't render those
acorns. I can't think that. Ryan, would you know, are there any acorn dishes in the West, in the States?
I don't really cook with a lot of acorns, to be honest.
But have you ever, do you know of any?
I know you feed them.
Okay, right, but that's
other than like Chip and Dale. I can't think of any.
No. I want to come back to this in a second. Continue what you're going with, but
sorry. It's made into a gelatin, so it has the consistency of Jello.
Looks just like
it looks just like Jello, but it has no taste to it. There's no. I cannot put my finger on a distinct taste. You said, what does this taste like? I said, well, air. I don't know, like nothing. You know what I mean? Like there's no actual taste to it. Now you put you put some soy sauce and some chives on top of it, and then you eat it. Nice. And I've totally come around to it now. I'll eat it if it's on the table. I'll eat it, and I'm fine with it. However, it took me years of I'm like, I love everything, but I don't like dotori muk. And then my students all go, we love it. You're crazy. What's wrong with you? And so that was mine. Yeah.
Brown flavorless Jello.
Flavorless Jello made from acorns. Yeah.
I like it. I don't know why. I can't defend it.
I do too. Yeah. But I also like it with the flavor stuff on top generally. But,
I like that we kicked off this discussion talking about Korean foods, and the foods we jumped to were all ones that really have a lot of tradition. So if you're talking about these types of food, this is very different from the things that maybe if you come to Korea and, if you've got a guide with you or whatever, people are going to want to show you like the extreme ends, and they might want to take you to like, Sannakji is a live octopus. Okay, if you're listening to a Korean podcast, you've seen a YouTube video, so like people eat live moving octopus, or like raw fish where they take the fish out of the tank and it's alive. They chop it up directly and you just eat it. Right? There's no cooking and anything, and it's still like twitching and this type of stuff. Okay, that's part of culture here, but that's all really new. That's all really, really new. Like eating live octopus. Sannakji is not an ancient traditional thing here.
Didn't Sannakji mostly come from Old Boy?
Yeah, it's a lot from a film.
Right.
I think,
Oh, is that
I think that's
right?
like
I didn't
maybe
know it
the
was
whole
that
one.
new.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe
But-
there's just, I'm not
Yeah.
positive on that.
But it's I think it's kind of fun to look at some of the more traditional stuff. So even like hui, like raw fish, that's a much more modern thing. That's not like an ancient tradition in Korea. But something like duck, I think duck is like over 1,000 years. Like that's old stuff. That's cool.
And
Now I gotta look into it.
I think we also have to mention really quickly we talked about it last week a little bit, the Japanese occupation, because there's a lot of the cuisine is fusion, essentially, or just Japanese food but Koreanized, which
Or even not even just the Japanese occupation, but during the Korean War when the American military bases were here, is from Budechige, right?
Budechige,
and Bude means
right.
Budechige, that's like American base. That basically means like military base soup.
Oh, Kevin, describe that one. That one's cool.
Can I ask you a question, Kevin, and tell me if this is like apocryphal or if this is actually true? So my understanding of Budechige, because I think you would know this, was like the Americans would dump essentially a food box down, there's starving populations, so they'll drop boxes of rations, American military rations, Spam, hot dogs, ramen, I guess, like maybe like instant noodles was, I don't know, that doesn't seem like a military thing, but
it's more the Spam and the hot dogs are what's in the Budechige.
And
but basically they came from the military bases. It's from because that's what was available. It was really hard for Korean people to get meat of any kind,
right? Protein,
and so at the time, this was back in the 1950s during the Korean War, and so meat was basically impossible, and so people were on the bases, and the soldiers would basically just, if they had extra, I guess, would kind of give it out to the populace, or the populace would maybe trade for it or whatever. And so then they started basically Koreanizing Spam and taking Spam and hot dogs, which hot dogs, picture like American baseball game or something, and then they're throwing it into this like spicy soup, which is actually, like, the first couple times I saw it, I was definitely surprised. I was like, why the hell are there like these just bland hot dogs? These aren't even like not like a Chicago sausage or something. It's just like
it's
random,
not a ballpark Frank or anything that
it's just some normal hot dog. And why is it in this soup? Why is there Spam and hot dog in this soup? And I was definitely surprised the first couple times I saw it, but it's tasty. It's a good soup.
I bet you'd put a hot dog and a bowl of Budechige next to each other. I'm going to Budechige, man. I'm going for the what does Bude mean? And what was it translate to?
I think it's just basically like military base.
So military base, and jjigae is stew. So just like
military camp.
Military camp
military
stew.
Base.
Okay.
Right.
So you'll hear us use the word jjigae a lot, and that just means stew, which is different than a soup, I suppose. Soup is much thinner, and a stew is a thicker a food, I suppose, right? If we're
I'm just fact checking some of the things I said again, because I don't want to act like I'm an authority on anything, because that's how you rolled that in the beginning. You're like, Brian knows food. Like,
sorry. Yeah.
I mean, I want to fact check myself. So first, hui does have a tradition in Korea that's not just modern, but the way that it's done today is very much influenced by like occupation, etc. But it does go back for a long time, like up to almost 1,000 years ago. Duck, on the other hand, this is just according to Wikipedia, 7th or 8th century BC.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Is that
almost
older?
3,000 years at this point?
That's I don't know, basically, right? I mean,
but again, that just surprised me, because it seems like a rendered, created, newer type product. It doesn't seem elemental,
But does it to me, it seems like it might be the byproduct of like alcohol. Like they're making alcohol, and then they have this other thing that they can't drink, but it's gelatinous.
That's what was extra.
Does the duck actually exist because the byproduct was alcohol? I'm not sure. With the rice
research project. That's your homework, Jack. Get on it.
I'll get on that. Sorry, I gotta.
But for all the funny things we can say about that food, I just wanted to emphasize that I think if you're looking for something unique and it's Korean and it's like traditional, it's kind of a fun thing to check out, because it's weird. I mean, if you're not familiar with it, it's a weird thing. I can't think of any other food that texture.
I would say though, if you're going to be talking about for people traveling to Korea in this specific place, tteokbokki is definitely going to be more of a modern take on it.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you go to the supermarket, there's like an entire aisle. There's, I mean, like Jack was saying, there's the Dok store down the street from you that just like makes all different rice cakes, and there's the kind that are like coated in the different kind of flours, and there's many different types of rice cakes, and those are going to be much more traditional than tteokbokki. Now, both are very modern traditional Korean, of course, but if you're going like way far back, then probably tteokbokki is going to be the least traditional of those styles. And again, it's probably going to be more flour.
Well, let me.
There's something I need to add that I think would actually be valuable for anybody that is going on a culinary adventure into Korean foods here or anywhere, seeking it out. One of the things that I really like about being in Asia in general is that if you can find foods that do not have spiciness, like in their basic design, like there is no spiciness, you can be pretty sure that there's at least a better chance that that's a more traditional food, because as probably a lot of listeners know, there was all chilies come from the West. They're all New World foods. So prior to the Columbian Exchange, so if you go back, 500 years, there was nothing spicy in Korea, nothing. There was no such thing as a chili pepper in India. There was no chili peppers. There were no chili peppers in Thailand. It's kind of hard to believe, but all of that came from the New World. So when you're in Korea, if you find foods that don't have a red sauce, which is not many, there's a lot of spicy stuff here. They really, really laid into the pepper thing. But if you find things that are undressed or unspicy like that, or don't have the red sauce, there's a good chance that it might be something that is a little more truly traditional, actually has, a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, the same thing that Ryan is saying to add to that, like kimchi is a perfect example of that as well. Like the original kimchi, I mean, kimchi is the ubiquitous Korean food. Like when people say, what's the most stereotypical Korean food? It's kimchi. And kimchi is great, but spicy kimchi is not the first kimchi. Right?
No, there's so many different kinds of kimchi.
Oh yeah,
nobody.
I've been to a kimchi museum. It was fascinating.
Yeah,
a kimchi museum.
Yeah, there was one somewhere near one of the palaces downtown.
Right, it's in the city, right?
Yeah, there was one. It's maybe it wasn't even a full museum. It was like an exhibit in one of those museums by the palace. I don't remember. It was a long time back, but it was really interesting. The only thing I remember, because again, this was quite a few years ago, was there was a cool map in the museum, and they were pointing out how like kimchi is very regional as well. And so there's like the Seoul kimchi, there's the Busan kimchi, there's the Pyongyang kimchi, the North Korean kimchi as well. And there's all these different types of kimchi from like a region around Korea. And then there's so many more. I think I remember reading something at the time that there's like over 200 different types of kimchi.
Well, the thing you have to remember, like if you sit down for a meal of like, let's say galbi is short ribs. Is that what that is? There's
ribs, kind of
ribs essentially, and you'll have a lot of side dishes. And in all the side dishes, you'll have these different types of vegetables, but it's all fermented. That's kimchi. Like each of those is a kimchi, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like it's and I could be wrong, but there's like
I would count them as it. Like in my refrigerator, like in our house, we have this is something to mention. Kimchi refrigerators. So kimchi as a smell, if you ever bought it at a store or whatever, it's powerful stuff. Like it transcends the concept of garlic and onions and anything else you can think of that is powerful.
Transcends time.
Yeah.
It'll be with you forever.
Tap on, screwed tight in your refrigerator. You've got about 24 hours before your butter, cheese, and milk all smells like kimchi. So in Korea, it is totally common. This is not like if you're rich and you have extra money for an extra refrigerator or something. Everybody has pretty much a kimchi refrigerator. And this refrigerator is held at a special temperature, and it is for your stinky stuff. So we have one here. Kev, you have a kimchi refrigerator too, I assume?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, he says of course, right?
Yeah. Oh, we've got one too. Yeah, I mean, you got to have one. Yeah, I mean, because it does make a difference. It does.
It's one.
So much
well,
better.
one, it's for the flavors to not leak into everything else, but also because as people know, or as you might know, as you guys know, at least kimchi is fermented. Right. And in order to ferment it, it needs a very specific temperature range for a long period of time. And a normal refrigerator, it's closed, but every time you open it, the temperature is dropping and raising again. And whereas when you get this kimchi refrigerator, it's one of the, if you've ever seen like I used to have like one of these kind of freezers, kimchi refrigerators, for anyone who's listening, It's not generally it's not a refrigerator that you open from the side. It's a refrigerator that it's like a treasure box. You open the case up and you look down into it.
A chest freezer.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks. That's better. I'm going all medieval, the treasure case. And
the kind of thing you would hide a body in if you maybe committed a murder.
It's either kimchi or that. But right, so it keeps the temperature the same, and so your kimchi will taste better after you make it. You put it in a kimchi fridge, not into your normal fridge, because it ferments it better. It's the same as when they used to bury it underground back in the day. Underground is very consistent temperature. So is a kimchi fridge. That's kind of the point of them.
Yeah, who would have thought burying food in the ground for long periods of time would make it smell, permeate other foods in the fridge? But you never know, I guess.
It is
let's go back to something that I talked about a little bit
sure,
ago,
go ahead.
Just really quick, because I think it was, or it's jumping back topics, but you were talking about acorns, right? And this is something that Ryan and I have mentioned in random conversations in the past, something that we just think is really funny but cool about Korea in general. Jack, I know Ryan and I've talked about this, but you've been out, you live kind of outside of the city. You've been out in the past and you've seen suddenly like the older generation of generally the grandmas, sometimes the grandpas are out helping as well, and they're just like picking at the grass. Have you seen them?
or at the park they're pulling berries, like
right. And there's so many little grasses and random foods here that like in the States, like an acorn, it's like, this is not edible, this is acorn food. There's one, I just had to look up the English for it, souk, it's mugwort. And like that's a really, like, I would look at it and it's like, that's a kind of grass. That's weird. I don't know what that is, but it's delicious when my mother-in-law knows how to make.
Oh yeah, like some of those greens. Like, okay, this is cool.
There's some really cool.
Yeah, what Kev's talking about here. You can see this. You don't necessarily even need to get out to the rural areas. It's more common in the rural areas, but you will see this in Seoul, in the capital. You will see people doing urban foraging, I guess is what you call it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's people that, like, I remember back when I lived in Itaewon, the street from Noksapyeong subway station to Namsan, like, going up to Gyeongnidan. So there's like the stretch. There's all these ginkgo trees. So
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that you'll see people out there with a little basket, and they're just picking the berries off the ground. It's food. You can eat it.
Yeah.
The other cool thing that Kevin's talking about is the variety of greens. This is still, I've been here for how many years? 12 years. I am still learning all of their, the flavors and uses. I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, flavor of greens, but there's so many cool, bitter or just strange greens, like chrysanthemum. Sure, I probably had a dish somewhere when I was in like a fancy restaurant or something. It was like, mixed in with my greens and my salad or something. But here you buy it by like, the bunch for $1. And it's used, you blanch it in a hot soup at the table when you're eating, and you just eat it up. If you've never had like, a giant clump of blanched chrysanthemum in your mouth, it's a powerful flavor. There's just, if you go to any grocery store, practically any supermarket, you're going to see a smorgasbord of greens that you probably don't know.
Right.
And it's just a really cool tour. I love that. So the greens
it's cool for me as well, because someone, like you were saying, the urban foraging, so many of it, like I would just think like that's a random grass. That's just a random thing. I would never even think that it's a food at all. And people are picking it up and doing really cool stuff with it. And it's interesting. It's a really
I'm not especially talented when it comes to cooking and stuff. So I stick to the more common lettuces that I recognize. If I'm going to buy something,
I don't know how to cook it at all either, but I know we've been out with my in-laws, and one time we were out on like kind of a picnic day somewhere, and suddenly mother-in-law, she looks down at the ground and she's like, oh, there's a bunch of soup, there's a bunch of mugwort here, and she's like, quick, go to the car, get a bag. And suddenly an hour later, we're leaving with like 10 kilos of
that's great
bags.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell are we gonna do with this? And then we get home and she's like, just wait. And then the next day we've got this like amazing different side dishes and things. And it's like, how did you? It's just like magic.
Yeah. Well, it's cool if you become familiar with some of the greens. A lot of them, they're not necessarily mysterious once you know what they are. So like suksukat and like minari. So minari is a plant that probably has its English equivalent. I can't think of what it is, but I use it. I use it in
Dropwort?
What is it? Dropwort?
Minari?
Minari
That's
is
what my
dropwort.
dictionary is telling me. Not the thing that I know.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that's
Water
used
parsley, water celery, water dropwort.
yeah. I
Got
mean,
me.
you
It's
can look at
probably
what
a species of that, but you know, who
Right,
knows?
so you
If
can-
it's that same
you
thing.
can look at the dishes that a Korean, menu would plug it in for. You can, you have to be sure because there's one, I know there's one popular green here that if you don't cook it, it's like nettles or something. It's not nettles, but it's like basically that same principle as eating nettles. Like you have to cook it, otherwise it'll make you sick. But for the most part, you can just use them raw even. But minari, I use as an addition to my risotto. It adds a nice little crunch. The stems are just thick enough. It's not watery, so you can kind of use it like a vegetable. So I chop it up really small and I mix it into my risotto, and it also makes for a nice garnish. So, and it has this cool fresh taste. Or like what's the pernilla leaves? The
you're so far over my head right now.
Oh no,
Yeah, I don't know most of these either.
Gini. It's in every kimbap. It's in everything. Gini.
Sesame? Sesame.
Yes.
Kidney.
Are they sesame
leaves.
or pernilla leaves? Is that sesame leaves? Same thing?
Pernilla, I don't know. But I know
It's like a grapefruit or something, but they're a little bit fuzzy, and some people either love it or hate the flavor. That's a strong taste, and that's unique.
I love them.
What would you? Okay, so Kev loves them. What would you say it tastes like?
I'm not good at describing foods in general. Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard, right?
Yeah.
It's like
I don't have a vocabulary for food descriptions.
Dude, I have no idea what I call it. I don't know what it's like. It's gamey. It's just what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a strong leafy, but I love leafy veggies in general. But it is definitely a very it's a stronger one. It's like lettuce, it's just
like a kale or something like that.
Yeah, like I like kale as well.
Yeah,
I enjoy those type of like strong leafy veggies.
Okay. I just wanted to
Kidney
contribute.
is definitely an interesting one.
I think I've run out of all the vegetable names I know. Yeah. But I think the interesting thing here, I think the larger point is like there's so many names for like different types of octopus that they have, right? What do we have in Minnesota? We don't, where do you go to get an octopus in Minnesota? You know what I mean? Like we're land bound, there, I don't think there are too many
seafood definitely
in the Lake Superior. And I'm not sure.
You want to talk about food that really has a lot of vocabulary is seaweeds here, right? Like seaweed is seaweed for us, but there's kim, there's miok, there's all these different types of seaweed here in Korea, which is also a really interesting thing. And that's another one actually for people listening. Like you're thinking like seaweed, depending on how close to a coast you may live. But if you've ever had sushi, you've had seaweed. And that's kim, that's the kind of like dried stuff. But then there's, the birthday soup, miyeokguk, that's like the more like wet, kelpy.
That is a little bit different though, because like kim is actually algae. So that's like they're farming that, they're growing algae and then they're skimming it. Yeah. But we usually think of it as seaweed. It comes from the ocean, or like from brackish water or something. I think it's some stuff.
So sea algae. I'm not
sure
if
if
that sounds
algae,
better or worse.
That's created. That's kind of like that. But eating like straight up kelp, like like if you see like kelp, like bull kelp on the coast, if you're living in Washington, like where I used to live, like it doesn't look like food to me, but now it does.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's something that I'm wondering as well. Like with so many things in our world, I'm curious what's going to happen in the future. Because like knowing how to cook, mugwort or seaweed, that like the kelp, that's going to stick around for a while. But like dotorimuk, the acorns and things like that, like that's something that my mother-in-law just like knows how to do.
Yeah. I feel like that knowledge is being lost, right? Like each generation, the interest in it is less and less, right?
Yeah, my wife has no interest in knowing how to make acorn jelly.
Yeah, and I wonder if it'll just get like it'll just be like, I wonder about this because, okay, we can think about any tradition on earth. Okay. So for listeners, you're thinking about, well,
anything, really.
food change, like, and that's going to change, you're going to have a generation that doesn't care to make kimchi during the kimchi season, but, there will be the gourmand crowd that will, always care about making kimchi. But there's certain traditions here that are really cool. And I really do worry that they're going to be lost. Like, I live in this house and we have the top floor and the bottom floor is this little grandma. She's like 86, I think. And in the yard, we have a gate around the house. And so in the yard, there's a courtyard. She has kimchi pots. Some is this big, some are like this big, like I could almost sit in it. She's making her own pickled veggies. Right now, I walked in today. She's got all of these Korean gochu peppers. She's got them laid out all over the yard, just on the ground.
You ever seen them in a parking lot?
There's days I come home and on the clothesline that connects, like to get to my stairs, I have to go under it. Yeah. She's got fish drying in the sun, and I've got to duck under these dripping fish. So like these kind of traditions, I just don't feel like, the next generation's really going to keep up that interest. Some of those things just don't have the momentum to continue that way. And
it's also because it's just so easy to buy it these days. Like most young people are going to be like, I could sit down and make kimchi once a year for the entire year, and the kimjang, that kimchi making day is cool. Or I could just go to the store and buy it. And these days there's some pretty decent homemade kimchi that you can buy as well. Like it's just getting easier and easier to buy. I mean, it's like everything. People just don't know how to fix things in their house as much as they used to, because you can just pay someone else to do it for us.
So I mean, maybe Kev's got a point there, like it'll still exist, like
in that corporate kind of way, so though,
dried fish, which is used for tons of stuff here. That's still going to be a thing. And like, this grandma's making, drying out chilies, maybe to grind them and turn them into a powder. And that's the gochu chili powder that's used in everything. So she's making her own. Okay, you buy it, someone else makes it, no problem. But the thing that I think will be lost is that the quality of it being around you. It's not weird for me to walk, like I go out into my market to get to my house. I live at the head of the market. So I have to walk into the market to leave, basically. And when I go through there, you're seeing these scenes that I think are not going to exist very soon.
And that's, that happened. That's been happening for decades now. Do you remember those little houses? I forget what you call those neighborhoods, but they look like, they're this labyrinthine little houses that are kind of stacked on top of one another, and they go up you might climb like 100 stairs to get to the top of where all these different little houses are. Do you know what I'm talking about? These neighborhoods, they're almost like I don't want to say shanty towns, but they're kind of they're kind of a thing like in Korea.
Like a hunter village, like the traditional construction, or
no, these were like in Seoul, and they were kind of just like little house apartments that are kind of stacked on top of another, and they just keep
in Huam here, I've got that on when I go up to my running trail, it's like right there. I was like, oh,
yeah, they're fascinating. They're so cool to look at, but they're knocking them down at just like a, rapid pace, because they're building another high-rise apartment complex, and that's, I think that's another little cultural touchstone that is kind of being lost. And, I can't blame them, we did the same thing in the United States,
it's happening globally,
right? And it's just sad, I think maybe
just like in the US, some of that's coming back, right? So like we through the 50s and 60s, automation, everything, people stopped canning their own pickles and stuff. You just buy your own pickles. But now we've got all these millennials, they're making pickles, man. So maybe the same thing will happen. Maybe like what I like right now is I sit outside, I can have my cup of coffee and I'm watching the fish dry, and I can see the kimchi pots. It's the aesthetic. It's just an awesome aesthetic. Maybe that'll disappear, but maybe like there'll be another generation that gets stoked and they're like, you know what? We're bringing back kimchi pots.
It'll be the vinyl of Korean traditional food. You know what I mean?
The year 2100 Korean hipsters are going to be making their own kimchi and soybeans.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. They're gonna be like, you know what, guys? Let's bring back drying fish on the clothesline. Let's bring it back.
And we're making pickles
instead of microbrew
you know?
and pickles. It's kimchi and
well, you're
and
right.
dried
It might exist in that hobby space where a lot of this stuff has come back. It'll never come back the way it was before, but you know, we're never gonna pop a CD again into a CD player and listen to an album. You know what I mean? It's just not gonna happen.
No.
But maybe that's okay. Maybe that's just the way it's supposed to go.
So while we're kind of, I think a good thing to kind of wrap things up with food here, just for people who might not be super familiar with Korea, is like we are all very familiar with Korea and Korean food, and we know how to get around. And these days, getting around Korea is way easier than it was when we first came here. You know, like when I first came here, it was impossible to find proper Mexican food. And being from Arizona, I needed my Mexican food. And now it's all over the place. You know, there's foreign restaurants and there's everything everywhere. But in my neighborhood, there's really not too much of. If you live in Itaewon area, sure. If you live in the Gangnam area, sure. Jack, I'm sure in your neighborhood it's still pretty Korean in general.
You know what?
Other than fried chicken and pizzas.
Well, we have the 2 military bases in Pyeongtaek, so there's plenty of spots like that. Yeah.
Well, if you're in other places then where you might not have quite the foreign element, you know, it's kind of weird when you come to Korea and you walk into just like Korea, the market or the small restaurant, and you're like, what the hell do I order? How did you guys survive when you first came here and you didn't know anything about the food? It was hard to find proper foreign food here. Like, what did you eat for the first year?
Kev, we should have started with this question because this is the classic one. This is the classic. I love this. I love this. Jack, you want to go first?
This will tie it all together. Well, I'll tell you what. Okay, if you looked at my 2004, I live by myself. I'm starting a new job at a Hagwon. And if you looked at my refrigerator, you would find maybe like a half-drunk bottle of soju, a tin of samjang. Do you know what samjang is?
Kind of like the spice or the sauce.
Yeah, it's like a doenjang and
fermented soybean paste with
rendered fermented
chili paste and fermented soybean paste mixed together with some sesame oil.
I consider it the most underrated condiment on the planet. It is the most. It is awesome. I swear to God, I've had this conversation with millions. Like, I'm sorry, but not millions, but many foreigners, and I'm hyperbolic sometimes. And every single one of them was like, "Yes, I know, it's fantastic. I put it on my kimbap. I put it on my mandu." I would just, my meal every day for lunch when I went home is I would buy a kimbap roll and a mandu. And I'm sorry, I didn't explain what mandu is. Mandu is
dumplings.
Dumplings, right? Pot stickers. And I'd bring it back home and I'd put some samjang on it, like kind of like putting wasabi on sushi. I would put the samjang, the bean paste on the kimbap, and I ate that for lunch every day for a year. That's
a dedication to samjang.
That was it. You know, that's all I had in my fridge. You know,
my first year here, I never cooked either. Like I went to the store one time and I bought some food. I'm like, I'm gonna make rice, and then I just didn't. I ate out always, and that's one thing actually that I think people talk about Korea being really expensive to live, and that's true. Of course, housing is very expensive, and a lot of foods can be very expensive. But I ate a ton at like the local kimbap restaurant, at the local just Korean. You know, it's basically, for people who don't know, it's kind of like the Korean fast food place. Like you go in, they have just a menu of everything on it. You know, it's like a diner. And it's just got every kind of Korean food. And is it amazing quality? No, but it's pretty cheap and they've got everything there.
Yeah, and I was in. It's also, just really quick, it's also much healthier than like American fast food. It's kind of a cool thing. Sure. It's like you can get a $4 meal and it's not going to like give you diabetes.
Yeah, I think the $4 meal is a bit outdated, right? I think that was. I haven't been in a long time. I haven't either, but I think now the average is probably about 6. But I'll still occasionally go to those around campus actually for lunch when I have like a lunch break or something like that from between classes. But I ate in one of those like kimbap restaurants almost every day. Like that, it was between my house and the Hagwon where I was working. There was one of those kimbap restaurants, and I walked in. I mean, I ate nothing but bibimbap for the first 3 weeks because it's the only food I knew. But then, as I slowly started asking friends and slowly started learning the menu, that's all I ate. I was in there almost every day, and that's how I survived for the first year. And it was relatively cheap, and they've got a variety of really cool Korean foods.
By the
Once
way,
I did
great
start
reason
cooking,
to learn how to read Korean too.
oh yeah, just learning the foods.
Because the little menu is the menu where you circle what you want is all in Korean. If you can learn to read that, that's a great way to start.
Things you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So that was my first year here, was just eating in one of those restaurants, and you can do it like Ryan was saying, for pretty cheap. Like it's not a lot of money. There's a variety of food. It's relatively healthy unless you just order the donkas every day, like the fried pork. Like there's I mean, there's definitely unhealthy things, but generally it's a lot of rice and veggies and Korean style food, and that's what I survived off of for my first year plus in Korea.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to get initiated into the food, because they have the kimchi stew, they've got the doenjang stew, they've got the sundubu stew, which is a tofu,
soft tofu.
Yeah. You'll eat a kimbap, which is like a sushi roll kind of thing, but it's more
without
like
the fish.
Without the fish. I mean, it really is like a great way to kind of like dip your foot in if you want to try traditional Korean
a mediocre
dishes.
Version of all of the different
You're right. It's a mediocre it's a mediocre version of basically the most famous foods, the main foods.
Yeah, it's like it's the vanilla hit list of Korea. So if you're coming to Korea, you're looking for these places, there's 2 chains of them that are really easy to identify. So just like McDonald's is a chain, they have 2 chains here for these things. One is what are they?
Kimbap Changguk and Kimbap Nara, I think.
Nara. So one is
if you learn how to say kimbap, either sometimes it's in English as well, but also learn how to read it in Korean and just look for that. And there's
look for the color orange, like Ryan's jumper,
color.
Yeah, just look for an orange sign and and tables and orange walls. Yeah.
For myself, I was a little reluctant. I didn't really when I got to Busan, I had the unique opportunity to always have dinner with like a group. It just kind of seemed to happen like every night. So I didn't have to deal with sorting myself out much except for lunch. And, I don't think I'm good at cooking, but I like cooking. So I've got like, obviously these guys prefaced it that way in the intro here because I'm like the guy who likes to cook. So I like to cook at my house. So if you know me, you know that. And I had a lot of fun in the first period I was here because I would go to the markets and there was so much stuff I didn't know. And so I would just load up, come home and just do experiments with stuff. Or going to the supermarkets, the prepackaged stuff cracked me up. Using things like odang, which is like fish sausage. So they take the fish, we're talking about the little grandma downstairs, it's drying the fish. You can take it and I guess grind it into a powder, mix it with some, I think wheat flour too. And then some flavors, salt and spices.
That's
whatever.
Also in tteokbokki, they put that in there as well.
Yeah, so you'll see, you'll see odang. Odang is in tons of street food. It's fish sausage. And I was told that's what it was. So I was like, fish sausage. I'll just treat it like sausage. So like, I tried frying it up with some peppers and eggs, like it's sausage. It's not quite.
That didn't quite work.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
It's a good try though. A+ for effort.
I just took a go at everything that I saw. And so I had a blast. But when it came to, on the street and I got to eat, same thing. I hit up, Kimbap Changguk, I think was my go-to in the area I was living initially. And I did the sundubu jjigae, the soft tofu soup. It always has like a poached egg in it. So it's like a red broth, often has like half of a blue claw crab in it, which doesn't really give you a lot of meat, but it gives a lot of flavor. A couple of clams, little tiny clams again.
And those suckers are hot as the Surface of the sun, man. It takes forever for those to cool off, you know?
Yeah.
That's in the hot bowl.
But if you're looking for something that's like just filling, it doesn't sound like it's like, what, a bowl of soup? That's not much. But anytime you order the soup, you automatically, in most dishes, you get rice for free. It just kind of comes with it as part of the package. And that's a cup of rice and a cup of sticky rice. And then there's always just a little smattering of banchan, which are side dishes that always come with it. It's kind of like whatever the chef's got for the day, whatever's going on.
Sometimes you get lucky, man. Yeah,
it's true. In these places, it's very limited. So your banchan might be like 2 things. But if you're in most other restaurants, you can really like strike gold.
Yeah.
It's so much freaking banchan
and they'll refill it too, you know, they'll give you more
for free. Yeah.
Side dishes, when you finish it, you can just get more. It just keeps going. So if you want to get bombed, you can do it for $6. You just kind of keep filling up. But in those places, these chains, you'll have unlimited kimchi. So the kimchi is free. It's self-serve. They have a tub of kimchi. You can just go and load it. And if you've got that, a cup of rice and a little broth, I mean, you get stuffed on it.
You're doing all right. Yeah, you can. Korea is a. If you look at the index of like how expensive OECD countries is, I know that Korea ranks quite high, and we could talk about that in a later podcast. A lot of that has to do with real estate and stuff like that. But there are ways to really.
There really are.
To really mitigate your monthly food expenses if you're a single person, because I think it actually
and even eating
more
out,
to cook.
you can.
I think it's cheaper to eat out than it is to cook.
Man, we got to split this into another episode. We got another episode. We got another one. I'm not done. I'm not done. We're running out of time for real. You just picked up another subject right there, talking about like the economics of eating out.
Yeah.
And the experiences of eating out, like especially for listeners, probably stoked on either finding Korean restaurants wherever you are or traveling here. I love the dining experiences you can have in the city, in this country.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things that just hooked me to live in.
And we haven't even talked about, I think we really do have to do an episode where we talk about the real convivial nature of Korean society, how important eating out is. And what a proper meal is, because there is a hierarchy, and kimbap changguk is not eating out. Eating out in American culture is anything outside of your house. You know what I mean? From McDonald's to Wolfgang Puck. But you're not eating at home. You're eating out. But I think there's a little different hierarchy here. Where they're like we're going out to a restaurant. And we didn't really even touch on that at all,
Like that's why I jumped on that, because I started talking about like how you can get like unlimited banchan, and I started picturing like wait a minute, we haven't talked at all about the experience. Like there's an experience you can have, and it's the classic thing you do when you travel. You go find restaurants, and that's the easiest thing to do. What do I eat, right? Korea, I really think, is a level up. It's really fun, and there's so many different things to experience.
Well, let's go ahead and save this then for maybe even next time.
Yeah, man.
Another time soon for sure.
Well, let's hopefully send us some emails where you can contact us at thesoulpatch@gmail.com, and that's soul is spelled SEOUL. And if you're interested in food, in the topic today, give us some listener mail and tell us, ask us questions. We love talking about this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. I guess that's it for tonight. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Hit the like button. Any other buttons you see on there, hit those too.
Buttons are meant to be pushed.
Push our buttons, man. We want it. If you're listening to the podcast, you can find us on all the major platforms. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, Amazon Music, etc. And if you want to help us out, it really does help us out to leave a review in Apple Podcasts. So if you like what you hear, please give us a good review there. And I guess we'll take care, and we'll catch you at the patch next week. So good night, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
I'd like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Talkin gear.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
The quiet man.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Dopamine.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
the break.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Hey, Bobby.
Let the bass go.